sa to? When I was invited to come here, I said, timing. Because I always go out there in Luzon, and I always speak Tagalog. I get invited there. But you know, actually, I said, oh, this is my opportunity to talk in my dialect. I'm actually very Visayan, Bisdak, Bisayang dako. Pero, ang akong Bisaya, Surigao. So when I started actually talking in my dialect, in Cagayan de Oro, I could see people smiling on an otherwise serious topic. So anyway, I don't know if you're familiar to how the dialect of Sugurigaonon is being spoken. Diba? Ninja ray mo patay ninjo. Matuyog way haboy-haboy. So in that case, I will try to speak in English, a little bit of Tagalog, and a little bit of Bisaya, so we can understand this discussion today. So anyway, how many of you actually know that there is a Climate Change Commission? Okay. I'm happy with two hands, actually. Three would be a stretch. Okay, we're a Climate Change Commission. I am currently the vice chairperson. The chairperson is actually the president of the Philippines. And there are two commissioners under me, the former Senator Herson Alvarez and Commissioner Nada Revsanyo, who used to be working for WWF on the civil society. So this is the structure of the Climate Change Commission. And because of that, that's my authority to be invited here to speak about climate change and really talking about more of opportunities rather than all this risk that we keep on hearing about in the news. So let me start with my first slide. So we'll do a climate change 101, but I know a lot of you already know what climate change, but let's try to speak about this. These are frequently asked questions. Everywhere I go, these are the questions that are being asked. What is global warming and how it is related to climate change? My main challenge as a government official all the time is, well, before we have a problem on maybe credibility. So I was looking for someone who could help me explain global warming a little bit better probably than Al Gore. So that wouldn't be me, right? So I went around looking at the internet, who would be a best source of information, of a simple information about climate change other than Al Gore. So I went through the internet and I found this.
I'm off to work at the Krusty Krab, frying up patties and blabbity blab. Huh? That's new. Strange place to park a car. What's this for?
SpongeBob, you're wasting me precious carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide?
I'm pumping it into the atmosphere, boy. Thanks to global warming, the temperature will soon go through the roof, and then we'll have an endless summer.
Why do you want an endless summer, Mr. Krabs?
So I can open my latest money-making venture, the Krusty Pool.
But what about winter sports, Mr. Krabs?
Forget winter, boy. We're talking suntanning, hanging tan, and swimming all year long.
The endless summer does sound fun.
And profitable.
Fun and profitable. Big business does it again. I just wish it could be the endless summer right now. Hey!
Oh, umbrellas are $3, sir. Oh, what a bargain. I'll give you 5. What the? Arnicles, it suddenly got very warm in here. Who turned up the heat? SpongeBob, what are you doing?
Just throwing another tire on the fire for global warming, Mr. Krabs. Hey, look! It's working! The entire town is heading this way to cool off!
You mean payoff? Hurry, SpongeBob! Fill the pool! Fill the pool!
Aye, sir.
Have your money ready, folks. The line starts here. Where's everybody going?
We're all moving north. We can't live here anymore. It's too hot.
Only customers have moved to cooler climates.
Look on the bright side, Mr. Krabs. There won't be a line to go in the pool. Get in the pool!
Okay, did you get that? Two things, he said. profit. What was the other one? What? Okay, it was fun and it was profitable. Discussion really on climate change in a global arena. The reason it seems that how come we know about this problem for so long in the 1990s, until now, it's still business as usual. Because the discussion on climate change in a global arena, my friends, is not about loss of lives, it is really about the economy. If we will address climate change in that context, we know that the US and other developed countries are now trying to say which of my sector will be affected if I will really address climate change so that we reduce global warming. So earlier the host said it's so unfair. This has really been, a thing that had been done by the developed countries, and yet we, the Philippines, developing country, is, getting the first thing about all these impacts the Philippines is suffering about. So let me say, when looking at this, what is global warming? We saw the video. Is global warming causing the climate to change? Well, according to scientists, it is. Well, carbon dioxide is really naturally emitted. But according to the scientists, the IPCC, this is Interpanel Government Committee on Climate Change, together with Al Gore, of course we know all Al Gore, they won the Nobel Peace Prize. Remember, right? There are 4 Filipino scientists actually part of that IPCC. And they already arrived at the consensus. Lahat po sila nagsasabi, ang human activities have already contributed to the increase in temperature, to global warming. That's why climate is changing. If we are to simplify that explanation, para siyang kumot. Sa Surigao nun, haboy. Ang haboy, moro na yung greenhouse gas na naa sa atmosphere. Nagkabaga. Thick, becomes thicker and thicker. That's why the sun rays that normally should go out, we know the greenhouse effect, hindi na nakakalabas. Parang natutulog tayo sa may kumot. Pag makapal na ang kumot mo, nag-iiba ang temperatura mo. Ang difference lang, ang haboy o habol, pag mainitan na ka, pwede na nimong tangtangon. So this is where the difference is to simplify the greenhouse gas effect. So this is it, very scientific, technical explanation. Now, every time I explain this, at least at start as my premise or when I make my, all this discussion and lectures, sabi nila, kung science pala ang dahilan, kung yan pala ay ginagawa ng buong mundo, anong magagawa ng isang katulad ko na nag-iisa lang? Or anong magagawa ng Pilipinas na itinuturing technically ay mahirap pa rin kung ikukumpara sa ibang bansa? So anyway, nonetheless, this is where we are right now. So what is climate change? This is actually the official definition. Every year we meet. Merong UN Convention on Climate Change we call the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Every year na lang nagmi-meet kami. And every year na lang lumuluha ang Pilipinas tuwing umuuwi. Kasi walang masyadong nagaganap at nangyayari. To really address the main core of the problem is how do we reduce the increase in temperature which is causing climate to change? It sounds scientific, sounds technical, but really because ang dahilan kung bakit napunta tayo doon ay we're talking about economics. So let me see. So what are the potential climate change impacts? 3 things. The Philippines, because of our location, we are most likely suffer sea level rise, an increase in temperature, and extreme weather event, which is precipitation. Now this is where I get a lot of attention. Naaalala lang po ako, ang Climate Change Commission, kung may bagyo. Para akong si Miss Bagyo. Dahil po dito, ginagawa ko na ring opportunity because of this attention to discuss other things that would otherwise help us look at climate change more on a positive side. The reason these extreme events is causing a lot of awareness, but that's not what climate change is all about. there are other aspects of climate change that we can benefit from. Maybe you heard about green growth, maybe you've heard about the green economy. All of those are trying to address climate change in general. So health impacts, we've heard about forest impacts as well, we've heard about coastal areas, water resources, agriculture impacts, and all these impacts. It sounds so heavy that I don't know if I should be stretching it more in detail, and you'll end up either with a sad face, or your mood meter in this room would be under the sad face. I don't want that to happen, because the main purpose why I'm here is that this is something we can actually survive. This is something that we all can be able to address, only if we'll all listen, understand each other, and address it as a community. So if we look at this, how much greenhouse gases are we emitting? This is a little Philippines we have here, and this is the atlas of pollution of carbon dioxide in the world. Can you see the Philippines anywhere in this map? Number 1 actually is China. Number 2 is the US. This was taken, I think, 2011 data. Why is the US now second to China? Because this was the period where there was a lot of economic, almost close to depression in the US. So here we can see that the more you emit, the emission actually is almost the same as your economic growth. So it's the same way naman sa China, nung tumataas na yung economy ng China, tumataas na rin yung emission niya. Because all this industries that are supporting or pushing for economic growth are still very much using the conventional fossil fuel that are the main sources of carbon emission. So this way, the Philippines actually, even with this big slide, it's probably somewhere there. But nonetheless, we have an inventory of our greenhouse gases. The first in 1994, the second in year 2000, and what we saw there, the highest emission of the Philippines is actually in the sector of energy, with half of that coming from the transport sector. Now, we are here in Mindanao, a lot of brownouts. Later, I will explain what will be the relation of these brownouts, especially knowing that the Mindanao relies on hydropower almost 70-80% of our power supply. So let me go to the next slide. So why are we really vulnerable to climate change, looking at the science before me? You know, it's always, if you look at this, why are we vulnerable to climate change? There. We are visited by an average of 20 typhoons every year. Every year. And ang una na, minsan na nakikita lang natin kung ano yung malakas. Pero every now and then, meron kang nakikita at nai-encounter na bagyo. May magandang balita naman daw. Pag talagang full blast na ang climate change, kukonti ang bagyo. 19 na lang. 19 na lang, pero it will increase in intensity. In the Philippines, if you noticed, before we use our signals and our typhoons based on wind, right? But it's not the wind that really hurts us most now. It's the water na dala ng bagyo. Bakit? Kaya yun earlier, sabi nila precipitation, yun na yung dahilan because our ocean are warming already. Di ba pag nagluluto ka, pagluto mo, merong konting tubig, silaban mo, na-absorb niya. So, taking off from SpongeBob. So we're looking at this as 20 every year. You know, if we're visited by 20 typhoons every year, now we know why it's like this. I was explaining earlier about that kalan. Imo nang butangan nagtubig, imo nang butangan og kalayo. O say kalayo. Sakto. Kaladyo man kasi sa amin. Kalayo, paspas niya ma-absorb ang tubig, di ba? Ang ocean nato is already warming. So mas maraming nakukuha, so mas maraming ibabagsak. Kaya dumadami yung tubig. Next. If we're visited by 20 typhoons, this actually sea level rise, they're saying that it's gonna happen maybe 50 years from now. But actually, when we went around the country, we're seeing some of these signs already. This is an actual picture in my hometown in Siargao Island, one of the beautiful islands in the Philippines. Okay, promotion. Sea level rise. Next. Next slide. Increasing temperature. We've already heard about in the news a lot of coral bleaching. Kaya ko po ginamit si SpongeBob. Kasi si SpongeBob is actually what? A sponge. They're actually the first to go when the temperature increases. So he's actually more of, so when I presented this to grade 1 and grade 2, they felt so sad after, and they got angry after, and now they wanted to do some action because they don't want to lose SpongeBob. But it starts from there, you see. You look at the, you try to appeal to the emotion. It's the same way that I get attention when there's typhoon. That's why when I get to, when I get to be interviewed, I try the best I can with the short little time that they give me to talk about the typhoon in 2 seconds and talk about other things more positive in 8 seconds. But it's always a challenge. So this is what we will be expecting, and here we are. We've heard from our rock star of social media, Maria Ressa, how the Philippines is always top on the list, on Twitter, capital of the world, and this is one list I don't want to be in. We are 3rd in the list of the most vulnerable countries in the world. This was before Pablo. So chances are we're already up this list. But according to this UN and whatever, Maplecroft and other institutions who consider the vulnerability of the Philippines, there are 3 things, 3 combinations why we're vulnerable. 1, marami na hong tao sa Pilipinas. Maraming tao, maraming exposed. You're visited by 20 typhoons every year. So you have a lot of hazards, and you have a lot of people, plus 3rd, your infrastructure no longer respond to the changes. Manila, for example, every time, Manila, overall, our river system can only accommodate 40% itong tubig na to. Dagdagan mo pa ng basura, nabawasan mo na yung tubig, yung 40%. Dagdagan mo pa ng climate change, more rainfall, kaya nakikita mong bumabaha sa Metro Manila. And it's probably the same reasoning if you see in urban areas like Davao, which are seeing a lot of flooding, I understand, Cagayan de Oro, as well as other urban centers in the Philippines. So we're 3rd in the list. I don't like that list. I want us out of that list. So we know that this is it. We've seen this. 2009, Ondoy and Pepeng. This is the typhoon that created the Climate Change Commission. That's the reason, that's the law that made me where I am right now. Because under the law, they require 1 woman to be a commissioner. And I was the only crazy lady in government before who were talking about climate change. So the then President Arroyo said, maybe you should be in there. I'm glad that law is very gender sensitive and they needed 1 woman. I'm the only one who was there talking about it, so I became a commissioner after from the DNR. So, but honestly, when I was in the DNR, Environmental Natural Resources, I was advocating for environmental law. I stumbled that the climate change issue in the DNR is not given a lot of attention. I can count in my 1 hand the people who actually are involved in it. So in short, if DNR did its job, then that would have included me. There would not have been a climate change commission in the first place. When they was crafting this law, I was still undersecretary of the DNR. I didn't realize that I will be appointed to the climate change commission, even if I was already complaining that there were only about less than 5 of us talking about climate change. I turned the climate change issue as an opportunity professionally. So here we are right now in Ondoy and Pepeng, we signed the Climate Change Act. 2010, I know there was one typhoon. But Sendong was so big, and it happened here in Mindanao, that they forgot to put the 2010 data, and then Typhoon Pablo in 2012. And why is this happening to us? To us Mindanaons. To us that we're not used to this. I am from Surigao del Norte. Actually, it's one area in Mindanao where we're always visited by typhoon. In 1984, when I was a little kid, about, I think, high school, we experienced this. But I may have considered myself a victim then, but I would like to talk about myself, or consider myself a survivor. At the time, the First Lady was First Lady Nelda Marcos. She said, if you see an owner of a house standing, if you see there's only 2 houses standing in Surigao, and the owner of that house is very lucky. Well, I saw our house. It was still standing, so they're probably referring about by our house. But was I happy? No. Because I saw how this devastation, actually, I translated that personal experience by trying to do action. When we did a survey this year, in first quarter of this year, 8 out of 10 of those interviewed in a national survey done by SWS, 8 out of 10 agreed and said that they were already affected by climate change. The sad part though, 63% of those interviewed, more than half said, we're not doing anything about it. Where is the mistake here? Is it theirs? It may be government. Maybe we're not very effective in trying to relay. Kasi dapat ang impormasyong alam mo ang siyang magliligtas sa'yo. Pwedeng hindi kayo proactive, pwedeng kulang rin kami. So ang sinasabi lang namin dito, hindi na po kaya ng gobyerno tugudan ng pagbabago ng klima, kailangan nyo na rin kaming tulungan dito. So almost immediately in 2011, 2012, we passed the National Climate Change Action Plan, the first in the country. President Aquino signed it. Next, please. Because under the National Climate Change Action Plan, we realized that how warmer will it get? It will get warmer. So the National Climate Change Action Plan is really a reaction to all of what is happening. We're responding institutionally, meaning gumawa na tayo ng batas. Karamihan nga lang ng batas natin ay hindi na-i-implement. Kaya conscious ako bilang abogado na kung ako ang uupo dyan, hindi naman sana aabot pa sa ganon. Pero mahirap nga naman tugunan ng pagbabago ng klima kung ang problema ay napaka-complex. That's why when I speak around, you try to make the discussion simple, so that the people who will listen to you will actually be able to understand, simplify it, spread it, so that we all be part of the solution. This is the mean temperature of the Philippines. Global temperature is 0.8. The Philippines is 0.5. Oh yay, hindi pa tayo mataas. But the global temperature, they started observing it in the 1800s. And we started observing ours in the 1950s. So chances are, even according to Pag-asa, they agree that our temperature is also already consistent with the global temperature. And what does that mean? According to our scientists, that an increase of temperature of 1 degree will already result to extreme weather events. It will already result to probably coral bleaching as well as other impacts. Sabi niya, matagal pa yun, 2020 projection. Bakit nangyayari na ngayon? That explains it. Kasi even if data says it's only 0.5, it's probably already 0.8, nearing 1 degree. So anong usapan namin internationally? We are trying to convince everybody has a common but differentiated responsibility to contribute to this discussion by giving a number that we should not reach the 2 degrees because it is already irreversible. So if you look at this, move on. This is now the projection of Pag-asa. In 2020, December, January, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. This is our emission scenario, rainfall scenarios in the Philippines. In fact, under the 2020 scenario, Mindanao will encounter more drier season. But when it rains, it will really rain. So what we're doing here with all this data, unfortunately, my friends, this is why I'm here encouraging you to take more action, is because most local government plans are planned according to yesterday. They do not include these scenarios. Don't go to that slide yet. So most of our plans, like Cagayan de Oro, when we reviewed it, we reviewed Iligan. I was there also in Compostela Valley and Davao Oriental. Most of our local government plans have yet to factor in rainfall scenarios. So that is why we need to revisit these plans. And we need to insert this projection so that we will plan accordingly on a more long-term basis. And I have good news though from Cagayan de Oro. Who's here? Because of our engagement with the academe, before laging gobyerno lang, but we know that the academe should play a very big part in this solution. We have finished in less than a year what would otherwise normally would have been finished in 3 years. Yesterday, we now have the first 2D flood modeling of Cagayan de Oro, where 20-centimeter resolution, makikita mo na po yung Cagayan de Oro, lahat ng mga infrastructure nyo, kung anong posibleng scenario sa 2020 kung mangyayari ang baha. That's the first in the country, and we were able to do it in less than a year. Thank you to the support of our bilateral partners, and we were able to do it. We will soon present this to the President and scale this up so that all local governments should have the benefit of this technology. Next, please. So this is where we are right now. I'm with Stupid. Next slide, please. What should we do in climate change? Climate change mitigation, reduce our greenhouse gas. Next, please, is we have to do an adaptation strategy. We have to manage the unavoidable already. And this is the plan that we discussed. These are the 7 priorities of government. And the most important would be the knowledge and information education. So this is difficult when you're presenting on Prezi. It's too high-tech for me. It takes a while before it rolls down to the last slide. I think I'm almost finished. There we are. Water sufficiency. 30 agencies handling water. We're now passing a bill to make sure that we reduce those 30 agencies. There are just too many government agencies handling water issues. Human security, and lastly, would be knowledge and capacity development. And I'm glad that Maria Ressa is here. If I've listened to her probably before, we could have done something about the issue in information, because we really lack that, We're very restricted, limited, especially at the bidding process. It takes a while. And we know there's a lot of help out there. So this particular theme could help us a lot in information. So what did we do? We did an eco-town wherein we tried to promote rural development. Kasi po, kaya madami na pong nai-expose sa risk, ang ating pong kababayan na mahihirap, pumupunta sa urban areas, naghahanap po ng trabaho. Kasi wala hong hanap buhay na masyado sa probinsya, kung saan kami nanggaling, katulad ko. Ang 2 courses po ang ino-offer ng state colleges doon na maraming enrollees. 1, criminology. Crime of passion lang po ang marami doon sa rural area. Pag nagkagisingan na at nagkatapusan na, wala na pong krimen doon sa lugar. No? Criminology. The second is IT, 1 computer in 100 students paano naman po tayo. But that will tell you that the education system is actually preparing the students to leave. But there's a job skills mismatch in a rural area that we need to concentrate and focus on. We need to do more agriculture because our farmers are aging. We need to support our fishermen because of food security. And maybe you don't realize it because you're here, you probably can buy all these things, but eventually the cost of this and not acting on this right now will probably manifest itself in the future at magmamahal na po ang ating pagkain. So the PSF, the People Survival Fund, we help push this. This is now a special fund to help local governments, especially poor ones, 4th, 5th, and 6th, to hire experts because they need experts to understand all these technical inputs that they have. They have the geohazard map, hindi naman nila alam paano basahin. Meron kang climate projection, anong gagawin nila doon? So they need to be supported and they have to be capacitated. Kasi hindi porket vulnerable in urban areas, which is most vulnerable compared to the rural areas, but the 4th and the 5th and the 6th class needs that support so that they will able to also help themselves. So this is the Generation campaign, the youth campaign that we're launching. We launched this actually already in Cebu. We're doing next week one in Generation in Cagayan de Oro because we wanted to show the results of our project on Sindong, a 2-flood 3D modeling. I hope you can go. We hope to do this in Davao next year. And we have 3, that's me, 10, they're trying to rush into this. These are actually our staff in the Climate Change Commission. If there's something I'm really happy is that we're able to get the best ones, cum laude, magna cum laude, and they're still with us right now, and they make my life easier. And Ana Oposa, who's a Cebuana, is one of our ambassadors. She calls herself a chief mermaid. I think she also writes for Rappler. And Mayor Pai Alvarez, a 23-year-old mayor of San Vicente, very rich. You can see the airplane in the back, but very, very environmentalist. So, but she's doing it in her hometown. And of course, we all know the third one, Bianca Gonzalez, celebrity with substance, because they can better relay this more than me, especially in a young crowd such as you. So this is where we are right now, and hopefully you know where I am. I started doing Twitter, but please, it takes a while for me to tweet back because I put something, I erase, I put something, I erase, because I don't know, I might get myself into trouble. But you all see, the overall message is, ang impormasyong alam mo, ang siyang magliligtas sa'yo. And if you can help us spread the word, the right messaging, we know we can address climate change. This is something we should not, we should not be afraid about this. This is a challenge, yes, but this can be addressed. So maraming salamat, mayong buntag sa inyong tanong.
Salamat, ma'am. Please take your seat.